Hello, good afternoon to everyone that have just started joining us. I think before we start talking about CMA today, the number one question, I guess, for everyone here and also to Rebecca and Dr. Muse is, what's the number one tip to beat the heat? How are we doing?
Go to work where you've got air conditioning.
That would have been my tip. I sadly don't have aircon, so I'm sitting there with a fan turned off for today. But
Yeah,
yeah, fan, lots of ice water, crying.
yeah, yeah. Wow, I just hope that everyone who's joined us also is doing okay and having a good afternoon and just relaxing, having slushies, ice water, taking breaks as you should, and staying hydrated right before we get into this very heavy topic. But it's we got to do it. So, and it's got to be done. All right. So let's get started. Hello to everyone that's joined today's webinar. We're really excited that you're here. So we're going to talk about being compliant starting in September. We're specifically going to focus on how the new regulations laid out by CMA is going to impact booking and websites, but mostly we just want to chat about and see what just do a little pulse check and see how everyone is feeling. So that's the whole topic of the conversation today. And just a couple of things before we get started. At any point, if you want to start, if you want to ask a question, just go ahead, send in the chat, and we'll take it during the Q&A. No problem at all. And for anyone who is wondering if we're going to record the session, yes, we are doing that. So you make sure that you get it as well. So let's say hello to everyone who is here today. We have Dr. Julia Muse, who is a practice director and vet surgeon. Hi, Dr. Julia. How's it going? Do you want to just say hello to everyone?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on such a hot day.
Absolutely. And we have Rebecca Redshaw, implementation manager from Vetstoria. Hi, Rebecca. How's it going?
Hi, good, thank you, Shara. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And my name is Ishara, and I'm a director of product marketing at Vetstoria. So we know that this is a topic that everyone has been talking about for quite some time about the CMA regulation. So I think what would be interesting in today's conversation is, Dr. Julia, you will be bringing that very cool perspective of a practitioner and someone who has been, going through, implementing this. And Rebecca, I know you speak to a lot of clinics, so we have that insight. And then I can bring the pet parent inside. And I know personally, when you look at the regulations about pushing for transparency and things like that, now I'm personally a fan of it. But of course, there are lots of various thoughts about it, which is what we want to get into. September is when things are going to start coming into effect. So, what does that really look like? And what can clinics really do? Because I know we know we've been talking about what exactly the regulations are, but today we want to go a little bit beyond and see what are the very practical ways of applying this to your booking and websites. So, some of the statistics that we've seen on the report itself that the CMA published just a few months ago, just the whole transparency impact from based on what things are right now, at least in 2025, we found out that 41% of clinics still have not published any of their prices. And then 45% of that may have is sometimes at the bottom of the page or within frequently asked questions. So there are, certain ways that the whole user experience can be improved. Dr. Julia, what did you have any thoughts in terms of like looking at these numbers? Like, I mean, I kind of understand it, but is there anything that you found surprising?
I must admit, I'm still a bit surprised by that 41%. As you say, we've been talking about what the CMA is likely to want to create in the way of regulations for 2.5 odd years.
Yeah.
And certainly when I first got involved with the process and actually had a direct conversation with members of the investigating authority, they asked me if we had our price list visible on our website. And I was actually really surprised that my answer was no, back then we didn't. Because
Yeah.
I'm the kind of shopper where if the price isn't easily visible to me on a piece of jewelry or a dress I'm thinking about, I'm going to walk away from it. I feel like, oh
Yeah.
God, I can't afford that. If
Yeah.
it's that kind of dress shop where there's no prices, then I'm in the wrong shop.
Yeah.
So I immediately then at that point put our prices proudly on the ones that I felt that was most likely that clients would wish to know,
Yeah.
and have no problem with that at all. What the CMA is going to ask for is going to be far more extensive than what I have already got, but at least we have the beginnings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, also something that I found surprising was while 98% of practices did have a website, that there's that 1% that didn't have any online presence and
Mm.
1% just relied solely on Facebook, which was quite interesting. And I understand sometimes you just want to get online. You want to do the easiest thing possible. And then what's also interesting is how pet parents look for things online. We mostly look for reviews and all of those things, and most of our searches happen online. So it's interesting to bring both of these together and see that kind of gap, which we will talk about really soon. So we're not going to get too much deep into the new requirements that'll start to roll out in September. But what we know, just to give a quick recap to everyone who's probably joined and may have seen some content here and there, the whole point is that there's clear pricing on the website, one-click display of pricing from the main navigation for consultations, treatments, medicines, any care plans, cremation pricing, making sure the ownership is easy to find. And also, like I said, we go into detail about any of the plans that they are offering, and also other things like what does the complaint procedure look like? What are the qualifications of the team? And I know usually for me, those would be a couple of things that I like seeing. So in terms of the timeline that everyone needs to work towards, so we have another slide coming up later where we'll look at, phase by phase how it's going to impact everyone. But starting on the 23rd of September is when it's going to come into effect. And then there's a 12-month grace period depending on the clause. And then for those that's not really, who hasn't complied with it, there's a fine that we're reading, which is 5% of annual turnover. So it's interesting to see where clinics are right now. So it looks like if 40% is still the number, there's still a considerable date. Rebecca, I don't know what your recent conversations have been like with other clinics in terms of, preparing. What have you been hearing? Just a little bit.
A real mixture, I'll be honest. Some clinics will be, well, we're on it. We've already done this anyway. We clearly display our prices. We display our complaints procedure. And I did a bit of sort of digging around sort of an hour before our webinar to have a look at clinics I've worked with before, clinics I used to use as a pet owner. And I thought that's interesting. Yep, that's a clinic I always knew had their prices on, or you can see it a little bit more. Some clinics are starting to do it now because they've realized the CMA is coming.
Yeah.
I think some clinics are a little bit unsure, or it feels like a lot of work to do. But there's not, I wouldn't say complacency, but there's a sense with some that they think, oh, we already do that. We don't need to worry. But
Mm,
actually, I think the real question is how transparent are you? Think of it from the pet owner's perspective. You might feel I've ticked that box, the price list is on my website, but how easy is it to find? A good example I use when I'm doing online booking or anything like that with my clinics, and I use my husband as a guinea pig who's not tech savvy. He won't mind me saying this. And I'll say to him, right, you go and find on this website where the price list is. If he can't find it in one click or very, very simply, then that to me is, an example of quite a lot of people who use websites who are technology maybe a bit phobic. It needs to be near, clear and transparent. And I think this is in some ways a good way. I know it's brought a bit of panic into the veterinary industry and a little bit of concern, but we're thinking of encouraging that transparency and that trust with pet owners. So I think there's things we can definitely do to improve as veterinary, and I speak as a veterinary professional myself. I'm not
yeah.
in the clinic, but absolutely
Yeah.
there's things we can do to just improve that transparency for pet owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've kind of gone through a little bit about the overview and how everyone feels about it, in the next bit of the session, what we're hoping to go through is just get into all of the questions that we have. And we will have that discussion with Dr. Muse and Rebecca as well. But before we do that, we want to understand from everyone who is here what your journey has been like. So I think we have a poll that we can share with everybody. You can go ahead and Let us know, how prepared do you feel uh, in terms of the new CMA requirements as it comes into effect starting this September. Be good to know how uh, the vibe is like. Well, I think we have a few more we can get responses from. Okay, what I'm liking so far is that, overall there is understanding of the requirements and there is preparation underway. So that's definitely a good thing. And then ranking after is, changes are coming, but still trying to figure out what they mean. Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what we want to discuss. All right, we have like some who have already made the necessary changes. Awesome. And we're hoping the webinar will tell you where to begin. 100%. That is a question that, I also had in mind that I wanted to ask Dr. Muse and Rebecca also, which is coming up. So that is quite exciting. So let's get to the questions then. I know, Dr. Julie, you've been very vocal about the regulations, and I'm really excited because I know you've made quite good progress in terms of, bringing transparency to the forefront in your clinic and things like that. And you have been talking a lot about this on like podcasts and in your column and things like that. So, where are you seeing the gap when you speak to pet parents and how they feel versus when you speak to, colleagues or peers from your network?
Well, I think the big gap between those two groups of people is that the pet parents are mainly being fed by the press, and what they're
Mm,
receiving information is just a tiny snippet, which is essentially the headline: "Vet prices are too expensive," and all pet parents subscribe almost exclusively to, yes, it's always too expensive. In fact, some, I
yeah.
think, genuinely believe that paying nothing would be appropriate because they're used to the NHS. Many people fail to budget for pet ownership appropriately. And of course, what the vets are seeing, and certainly owners of independent practices like myself are very aware of, we've got wonderful people, highly skilled people who can barely afford to live a normal lifestyle, particularly the RVNs and the receptionists who are not as well paid as the veterinary surgeons. If these people are working full time, but they can't afford to become homeowners unless their partner is also working full time, and it's
Mm,
we're very badly paid, in my opinion, for our level of skill, and that is a huge dilemma because your pet owners, they hardly want to pay anything at all, but I want to at least break even, and I want to simultaneously give my staff really good return for their effort and their skill and their expertise and their loving attention to their patients, and that leaves a bit of a gap.
yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. That leaves like a lot to think about as well. I know, Rebecca, you and I touched on this a little bit before, but as you, what kind of questions are you getting from clinics about, the upcoming deadline, and what are you sensing? Is there like a sense of complacency, or are people scrambling, or what are you feeling right now from the questions you're getting?
Yeah, I would say maybe a sense of complacency that they feel we've got the prices on there, people can find them if they want them. But I think as veterinary professionals, and we've all done it, I know myself, you've had a client ring up, they'd like a consult, you go, lovely, all booked in for you, but you don't mention the price to them when they're booking. We're all a bit scared too, I think. It's that fear of you appear a bit money grabbing if you say up front, okay, well, the consult will be £55. Unless a client asks, you don't offer it up front because you sound like that old age-old fear, and we've all had it sadly, of, oh, vets are only in it for the money, they're telling me the cost up front because they're money grabbing. You're scared to let
Mm,
people know that, and I think it's a little bit of that with clinics. They say, well, the prices is on the website, it's clear to clients, they can find it if they want it, it's up to them to find it. But we need to maybe lean into that transparency and have that, build that trust with clients of if we're showing them the prices, it's clear, it's in the email confirmation of the booking, it's upfront. We don't have anything to hide. Clients don't come in awkwardly and go, I can't afford it. I've just got to reception and now I don't have enough money in my bank. It works both ways. We want to support our clients and make them feel empowered in their pet care and able to support their pets. But equally, as Dr. Muse quite rightly said, we're trained professionals. We should be paid for our time and we should be transparent about that cost, and say what that cost is. Because the big question I had when I was in clinic a lot was, well, what am I paying for? And actually, the answer is you're paying for the vet's time and expertise as you would with
100%.
a
Yeah.
doctor.
Mm.
Yeah, I actually, based on what you just said, Rebecca, I was thinking maybe this is a question for Dr. Muse also, because now that you've actually started like displaying pricing and things like that, I know there's generally a concern of, how this is going to be, how, like, how is the shopping around of like the clinics would be after you've displayed prices. But now that you have done that, what has changed for your front desk team? Are the conversations easier or better? What are the pet parents feeling now that there's change already implemented?
Shall I take that one, Becca? I think we're not yet seeing enough clients reacting, I think, to give you a strong answer to that. But I
Right.
did speak to one of my reception team yesterday about the phone call she's receiving, and she did say that she's definitely getting more phone calls where people are very upfront and say, "I'm shopping around. I just want to know
Right.
how much you're going to charge me for." And then, we could say, well, just go and look at the website and stop wasting our time. But because we're into
Yeah.
our customer service, she very politely says, yes, I can tell you exactly what that'll be. And if you'd like any more information, we try to open a conversation, but sometimes they just ring off. But we also get old OAPs coming in who are not computer literate. And bless her,
Yeah.
she told me she's got a price list printed out ready so that she can literally
Okay.
give it to somebody who is less computer savvy. And I think the CMA needs to remember that these putting it on a white price on a website is not necessarily helpful to someone who is not
Yeah.
computer literate or interested to look on a computer.
Yeah. Speaking of the rest of the requirements that the report has laid out, this is a question for the both of you. Do you think right now, when clinics are kind of looking at that, they feel like, oh, this looks too complex, or once you break it down, it's really not a lot to do? Is there anything you feel that's very complicated right now when you look at what's required of clinics?
Would you like me to answer that one, Ishara? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think for those of us who are used to the practice standard schemes with the Royal College accreditation, it's a very small thing. We are used to enormous tick box exercises that all have to be done by a certain deadline. So it feels like just maybe a 10% extension of that.
Mm,
But for those who have chosen not to be RCVS accredited, I can visualize that it might feel enormous and time wasting. Where you've come into the profession to help sick animals, to see them get better and to work not letting them fall ill. It is not necessarily everybody's cup of tea to want to have to work through an extensive document and ensure that every single box is ticked. So for those who are not used to something like the PSS, you need to find your inner goddess or find someone that you may have a person within your team who loves ticking boxes, and for that person it might be an absolute joy.
yeah, for sure. Um, Dr. Muse, what has your journey been like so far in terms of the compliance? So there's the pricing transparency that's required, then there's the medication that you need to display, then things like ownership, depending on, if it's corporate owner, if it's independent, then that's not something that you'd really have to think about. But complaint procedure, displaying the RCVS decision tree, so those things. And I know this is not just like, I mean, I know today we're talking mostly about like booking and websites, but if you take it as a whole, you'd have to display this within the clinic, in your signage and communications, all of those things. Where are you on your journey in this?
I
And,
felt, yeah, I felt very much. If I was doing the poll, I was, I'm aware of it, but I'm still starting really. But fortunately, we are a RCPS accredited practice. So, for
yeah.
instance, we already have a complaints procedure, and I've already interacted with the mediation service a couple of times. And ownership is straightforward because we are an independent. I think actually the hardest part of it all will be the anti-parasitic requirement to display
Ooh,
pricing because
right.
it's not difficult to do. What will be difficult is keeping it up to date because we don't have
Mm,
control over when those prices change to us.
yeah.
Whereas I control when we review the prices and how often we review our own prices, but I don't control the prices of the antiparasitic. So we're going to have to make a real effort, having done it once, to then keep it up to date as and when. Uh, I think that will be the single most difficult part of it. The rest is quite straightforward.
So this is like a thing I was curious about anyway. And I know this was also a conversation with I had like with other team members also specifically the updating part. Is there any best practice that you have or Rebecca that one that you're maybe hoping to suggest to clinics in terms of, the frequency of how you should update or keep things monitored? Is there any best practice that you are currently maybe suggesting or thinking of so you make sure that everything is updated at any given time? Although I can imagine it's very rough to do if you have like frequent updates.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I'm onboarding currently, I have clinics who'll say, "Oh, can we put a price in a content page, for example?" But what
Mm,
one tip is who it's with. We put a content page in with a lot of the corporate groups, and a lot of clinics will say, "Can I have the price here?" And actually, my advice at the minute is don't. I think it's good. I think it's good to be transparent, but you have to remember to update that. And coming from a corporate clinic myself, you have maybe one, sometimes two price updates a year. Remembering to
mm,
keep your website updated, your booking tool updated as well is a huge
yes.
thing. And what you don't want is to forget something. And clients will remember they might have screenshot something and gone, "Oh, on your website, my email confirmation, it said it was going to be X amount. I've now come in and it's £5 more." They're now angry and upset and frustrated. They take out on you. It's a simple oversight. I think with what we're hoping, to propose to clinics is that one-click update that everything will filter through. We'll update the prices in the back end and it will filter through to those email confirmations and it will be a starting price. We're not going to say this is it, it's going to be £50, that's it, you're paying nothing more, but just open that conversation so pet owners are aware this is the starting point for a consult, for instance. But actually, as you'd say over the phone, our reception would, nurses would, vets would, if there's medication, other things we need to discuss with you, other treatments, then that will be extra. But at least pet owners have that transparency. But absolutely, I think best practice is making sure everything's updated. But it is keeping that updated. And I think at the minute, it is difficult. You've got to have perhaps different places to do it: website, price system practice, in your booking tool, in your email confirmations. How do you translate that to clients?
Absolutely. And since we're talking about pricing, we have a question on this also. Is there any clarity on which prices need to be displayed as minimum? I don't know how right now, talk to me is how you're displaying your pricing right now. But the question is, how do you know which prices need to be displayed as minimum and how do you kind of go about displaying that?
Well, I've printed out the BVA's sort of thing, the British Veterinary Association, and I'm literally
Nice.
just working my way through it.
Yeah.
So I think there are going to be definitive guidelines. Let me just check because I'm not confident it's actually been finalised. Let me have a look. Um, items, written estimates, standard price list. Yeah, there is a complete list of services which must be included in your price list, and it's a click away on here. So the CMA have actually defined what they want, and I've seen websites where you can fill it all in, and it actually goes red if you're get it but there are two prices that the CMA have capped.
Mm.
The written prescription fee for one prescription and the written prescription fee for more than one. And it goes red if you go get it wrong on this particular website. So it's not too difficult.
Okay. Let's talk about those who feel like, okay, we're watching this to kind of start being ready or we're in that process. in that rush to become compliant, what are the mistakes a practice manager should absolutely avoid?
Oh, gosh, the mistakes they should avoid. Let me think. I think the biggest mistake you could make, which I hope those listening won't, is not letting your team know. So, your team probably trusting the team leaders to be to do it. They're just
Yeah,
getting on with looking after sick animals and doing the best they can. I
yeah,
think it's really helpful. Certainly, we're quite a big team with 30 people. There's never a day when all of us are on site. I think it's one of those situations where you need to be planning a team meeting now. Possibly, in our case, we generally do two similar team meetings so that everybody in the team can attend one of them and just
mm,
talk it through, because it's all very well, getting the website perfect and the automated appointment confirmation goes out automated. You don't have to think about it, but your people need to understand what's expected of them as
mm,
well. The conversation about written prescriptions being available, possibly, and if we don't use own brand pet products, but for those who do, there's got to be training around the new way of speaking this.
yeah.
So I think that would be a big mistake if you failed to include your people in your planning.
That's a really good one because you want to ensure like at any given point with any given project, even beyond CMA that everyone kind of sings the same tune. Rebecca, anything that you had in mind that, any mistakes that you think clinics should definitely avoid as they are rushing to comply?
I think Dr. Muse makes an excellent answer. I think definitely involving your
Yeah.
people. Maybe, highlighting someone who's responsible for that. Perhaps if you're in a corporate clinic and you have price increases, or independent, you have price increases, you discuss it. You have someone who's in charge of keeping those prices updated, making sure you're compliant there. I think again it comes back to maybe complacency as well. That could be a mistake of we've already do that. We don't need to, this doesn't apply to us. We have our prices online. It's fine. Clients can find it. It's making sure we are transparent, that it's easy to find. We don't want that complacency. Maybe have a walk through your website or your booking tool, whatever you have. Think of it from a client's perspective. What can
Mm,
a client find? Do they understand what this means? I love the fact, euthanasia is coming into it. That's a really horrible thing to say as a hard topic, euthanasia, isn't it? But
yeah.
from a client perspective, again, that's even more awkward to have that conversation about money and again
Yeah.
transparency. Having those prices and that information about if you're a corporate clinic, for instance, you might have a cremation service you have to use, but making
Mm,
sure clients have that information up front, they can use their own. There's other options, and having those prices available. Again, I think it's an awkward conversation people don't want to have, and I think it creeps back into that complacency of we already do this, but actually, could you be doing better? I think that'd be a big mistake of not walking through and thinking it from a client perspective and how transparent are you? How easy is it to find that information?
I really like that as well because I know that even like looking at, some of the other forums and the conversations where pet parents were discussing this, that transparency that they get to have, the information they get to have upfront, I know is very much appreciated, like you said, especially when it comes to the difficult conversations. But you get to walk in with a little bit of knowledge which make things easy. Thank you for that. I really like both those answers. I know that today we're kind of focusing more on along the lines of like booking and websites in general. So this is a question for both of you, Dr. Muse and Rebecca. What are you seeing the gaps looking at for clinics that have both their website as well as their booking? What are the gaps that you're seeing right now, based on like what they have versus what is required by September?
I think for us, and it's easier for me to answer for us.
Yeah.
We already have a one-click price list. It's not. It's very close to being comprehensive now, so not a gap there. The antiparasitics pricing we mentioned earlier, that's a definite gap, but it's just
Mm,
another page on a website, and that has to be maintained. So we're okay with that. I think a gap for me is I'm not quite clear how exactly I mean, do I just have to put independent vet, owned by Julia Muse, or what does that information have to look like? I think there's going to be a Royal College poster that you sort of a format, and we still haven't got that. So there's a bit of a gap there. And for us, obviously, at this point, we don't yet put our pricing onto the confirmations of all bookings. So my
Right.
reception team, when they make a booking, either in person or by phone, they ping out an automated email. But it's extremely easy just to add a sentence into that, and all our
Yeah.
bookings that are booked through online are via Vetstoria. I haven't yet had the conversation with Vetstoria about amending that exact, but I know that it's going to be easy to do.
Any ideas and thoughts that you had, Rebecca, in terms of the gaps that you're seeing with clinics that already have a booking tool website, but where are they now versus where they should be in September?
Yeah, absolutely. To echo what Dr. Mew said and to bang the drum around transparency, which I feel like I keep mentioning, I would say that's the big gap. I think I onboarded a wonderful independent clinic recently up in Scotland. She's watching Hello. And she was very sort of, she was launching a new website. She was very keen to make sure the prices was on there. And we added a content page to try and link to clients. This is the prices, it's there for you to have a look at. But what we don't want with the booking tool is to break that journey down. And I think you run the risk of that, of clients not booking online because they're going off and looking at the prices or perhaps discussing things or not, maybe looking at different things. You want to pull all of that information into the booking tool so it's there as part of the booking journey, and then as part of that booking journey, when they've confirmed their appointment, it goes into their email. They've got confirmation of it. They don't forget or misremember what a price is. It's there in black and white in their booking tool. And I think that's what we're missing at the moment, is that sort of that black and white there in front of them. They've got a copy of it, because what we
Yeah.
don't want is, perhaps they book something, and I've again, working from clinic, I've had a client come in and said, well, yesterday your nail clip cost £10, now it's 15. I said, yes, we've had a price increase. It happened overnight. They were a bit confused about how it happened overnight, but we had to explain it happens sometimes. What you want is that for the client, it's there in front of them, making sure the website information, the clinic information is pulled through to that booking tool and the website as well. And again, use the word transparency, which I'm probably going to get fined for using consistently. Is there, and again, just making sure clients are aware of it, and it's marrying up. We don't feel we've got anything to hide. It's not sort of hidden away anywhere, or we've covered ourselves. Here's a price list. It's part of the booking journey for the pet owner as well.
Mhm. I think it
Yeah.
might be worth commenting at this point that I think the receptionists are going to really love this change, this particular
Yes.
detail, because
Yeah.
why is it that in the veterinary profession we're shy about saying, and by the way, a consultation fee is whatever it is? I think that certainly when I joined the profession, which believe it or not is nearly 50 years ago,
Mm.
gosh, is it really? Is it
No
40?
one's calculating.
No,
I heard nothing. Yeah.
I think it's 40. I've been in the profession for a very long time, and you know what? Back in the day, people used to assume that we would do it for the love of the animal, and there is no question. I do my
Yeah,
job
that you
for the love
do.
of the animal.
Yeah,
I really
of course.
do, but
Yeah.
I also do need to buy food, and
Mm.
it's just nice every now and again to have a new T-shirt. Maybe something pretty for the garden. So yeah, people, I think going back another 30 or 40 years before I joined the profession, you've got James Herriot on the telly, and money is never seen changing hands in that. And of course, it was all
Mm.
farm work and invoices being sent out, presumably at the end of the month, if Siegfried remembered to send them out. We've been as a profession really fighting a battle of self-worth almost, that it's okay for us to say, there will be a consultation fee, even though it looks like I've done nothing. This is a re-examination. I'm effectively certifying your pet has recovered from the issue we discussed last week. There don't need to be any more antibodies, but I'm still going to charge you a consultation fee. I'm sorry, you know, and but it shouldn't feel like that you have to say sorry. So actually having the booking confirmation going out and saying, and there will be a fee, it just
Yeah.
saves us that embarrassment, that slightly British embarrassment, perhaps.
Yeah, we've all had it. That people, I think a lot of us have had as well, that thing in clinic, clients go, I'll pay you tomorrow. And I think, why is it in our industry that people do that? I mean, I live in a little village and my butcher waves to me when I walk past 'cause they know me. If I walked in there and said, oh, can I pay for my sausages tomorrow? He'd be like, you can walk back up the road and get your purse now. They know that I'm good fit, but it doesn't matter. I would never do that with any other industry. I'm like, I'll just pay tomorrow. No, you've had your service, and I think like Dr. Mew says, having that price there, there's no excuse to go, oh, I didn't know, oh, I don't get paid until XYZ date. It stops that awkward conversation, and equally, as I mentioned before with euthanasias, that horrible discussion you have to have with the pet owner, and some will ask over
Yeah.
the phone up front, but again, you don't want us to be seen as uncaring, but equally, it's a service you're providing, an important one, and it's still service you should, should be paying for. It just takes away that old conversation. I completely agree, Dr. Muse. It's perhaps a British thing of not wanting to discuss money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's just that maybe there's that hesitation to like share also because you think the moment that happens, you are driving your client away. Like a very simple example is sometimes this is, like even in general retail, assuming this is somebody's standard Instagram page where they've displayed some kind of item, they wouldn't display the price, but they would rather people comment on us because it just drives more engagement rather than displaying the price and just driving someone away. But I think if you were to think from the pet parent perspective, I would actually prefer finding the price on the website rather than asking someone and then
Yeah,
finding what it is and having that expression on my face going like I don't want I don't want anyone to see that. So I think from a pet parent perspective, I like knowing beforehand. So I think I would like to also kind of get into, and we were talking about the various ways that what clinics can do with their website and booking to be compliant. But before we go into what Vetstoria can specifically do, for anyone that's watching right now, or maybe the recording eventually, but talking to you, to the future, what maybe three things that a clinic can do starting, I don't know, tomorrow, to get started on that compliant journey.
Mhm. I'll take that one. Becca, did you want to go
oh
first?
no, no, you go first. You go
You
first.
look like you were ready.
I'll start with one, and then we'll go to you. I would say I would walk through your website and your if you've got a booking tool, your booking journey as a client. Rope in your husband, your children, I don't mind, to walk through and say how
Mm,
easy is it to find something. It's so easy, I think, when you're used to looking at something day in, day out, it's your website, it's your baby, you can get blind to it. Get someone, a family member to go, right, I want you to walk through my website and I want you to find out how much a cat spay costs. If they can find it in 2 clicks, brilliant. One click, even better. But how easy is it to find? Is it buried? I'm pretty tech savvy. Sometimes I struggle to find on websites, a
Mm,
menu, for instance, when I'm looking at a restaurant and I find it frustrating. I think, well, I won't go there. Something doesn't have pricing. It's the same for our pet parents as well. They want to be able to find things easily, and perhaps we've become a little bit jaded. Like, oh, it's on there, it's fine, it's easy to find, and actually maybe it's not. Maybe we need to look at it with a fresh pair of eyes and walk through that journey and see how easy it is to get that information.
So
yeah.
I should ask for three things, but my top one was going to be get your website updated. We've already got clinical freedom in place, and I've always
Yeah.
said to my vets, you must think only of what's best for the patient, but and work within the budget that the owner has for that patient. But we have to put that in writing and get it visible. So that's a little task we've got to do. And I would suggest as a number three, plan that team meeting so that your
Mm,
colleagues are on board. We find organising a team meeting is something that really has to be done a little bit ahead. We have to sort of clear the decks and make sure that the clinical work is done at a different time. Because what we've particularly got to make sure everyone is going to be doing is selling the loyalty scheme or pet care plans, whatever pet health plans, whatever you call yours. If you have them, you've got to make sure that you're selling them correctly and that the information about the plan is as the CMA requires it.
yeah, absolutely. I really, really like those. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about some of the ways that you can get started, or like the top three things that you can kind of bring into the conversation, what we will do right now is take everyone through how Vitstoria can help from a website perspective as well as an online booking perspective. So let me just go ahead and then we can talk through some of the points that we have. And what I also have is how this actually looks like in practice, which will be easy to kind of get into it and have a better understanding that way. So, in terms of the website, what is required, as you know, is if it's a corporately owned clinic, you will need to mention your ownership transparency, one-click price list. This is both what Dr. Muse and Rebecca have been mentioning. That pharmacy page, like we kind of spoke about how challenging that is, but then still making sure that's on there, and then complaints and displaying your out of hours. I want to get into a little bit about complaints and things like that a little bit later. But before we do that, I want to share with everyone what this looks like in example. So let me just open up the sample website I have. So what we have done here is showing what these things would look like if Vetstoria Websites was to create your website for you, and how we would factor in the things that you need in order to be compliant. So, for example, the regulation asks very clearly how pricing needs to be one click. So you see it right here in the navigation where you get to the pricing page. And this, I think the regulation document also gives a table and a format on how you can display it, which makes it really easy. So here we've shown the category, the various services, the size of the animal, consultation, preventative care, prescription, dispensing, administration, just all of that information in a table format. And also, like Rebecca mentioned before, end of life care, tough conversation, but then bringing that in here gives that little bit of context for the pet parent to have that conversation a little bit easier. Although it's very difficult, but making sure that pricing is included is important as well. Itemized billing, written estimates, and then if your clinic has care plans, making sure that's included also. So this is what it would look like if you were to display all of this information. And then I, as a pet parent, like seeing who is treating my pet, and then you get to see what the staff is, what is their RCVS registration, their qualification. So, as an example, this is how that would be displayed. And then, like Dr. Muse said, the pharmacy, all of the medication information, again, listing all of that. So, Rebecca, question for you as you help clinics build websites and add all of this information in. How can clinics get organized? So if they wanted us to support um, in this journey, what do they need to have in order? What would you require for them to have pulled together to have all of this up on their website?
Ideally, you mentioned biographies of vets and things and their RCVS registration numbers, which is great. I love going on a veterinary website and seeing who the staff are, what their qualifications are. Again, it's about transparency and seeing who's looking after your pet. Making sure you have all that information. I remember being outraged because I was on my one of my vet's websites when I was back in practice, and they hadn't mentioned I was a cat-friendly nurse. And I was like, oh, I really want to show that off. Bang your drum about what you do and what qualifications you have. Um, get your staff members to provide that for you. Making sure you're pulling all that information together, prices and things you should have anyway, making sure they're up to date. There's a starting point. Does your consultation cover, for example, is it dogs and cats, rabbits, all animals, or do you have maybe an exotic consultation, which is different? Making sure that's nice and clear so we can update that in the booking tool, create different appointment types so that we can again make sure those appointments are updated correctly, and sort of reviewing your parasiticides. That's a word I always struggle with, so I'm glad I've managed to say that today. What are your common ones you're going to need to display? Maybe having a little audit of what you do and don't stock. I do think this is great. They're displaying the active ingredient. Again, I think it's giving that information to pet parents, and then they can better compare as well products, because it's all very well us saying this is a great product, you should buy it from us, from our veterinary practice, but does the pet owner understand why they're getting it from you, as say Bob Martin off the shelf, etc., or frontline things they can just buy over the counter? Um, we need to have that information up front, and I think a lot of this you'll have anyway, but just being organized, maybe having someone who's in charge of that, getting those costs together, your flea and worming treatments, your staff information and biographies, etc.
Absolutely. We have a question that someone has asked as well. They if they wanted to update the whole website, including the CMA pages, because their website is outdated also, what does that journey look like? Can we just update it for them? Do they need to get websites from scratch from Vitstoria? How does that work?
If you have a website with Vitstoria currently, then absolutely we can update you, and we will be doing that as part of the process to make sure you are CMA compliant. If you don't have a website through us, or you're thinking about a website, then absolutely we can support you with that. And there's different ways and means and different websites you can have from us. I would say, speak to your perhaps your web developer, have a look at your website process as well. How easy is it to update your current website? Maybe you've got someone in clinic who's really tech savvy who can do it for you. Maybe you've got someone who's and I come across this a lot, family friends, you can't always get hold of them. I've come across some people, my colleague will know this, their web developer I think moved away, or they stopped, they weren't able to use that website anymore. How easy is it to update pretty quickly your website?
Yeah.
That's a really important factor. And yeah, just reviewing it really.
Yeah, definitely. And I know one of the other things that this also requires, mentioning the regulation would require is out of hours care. What does that look like? So this is an example of, how you could display it and then, what that consultation pricing would look like. A question that I had for the both of you is, I know a couple of other things that clinics would have to display is their complaint procedure and the RCVS decision tree. So the RCVS decision tree part, like if a clinic needs to kind of include that, do we know how one can go about obtaining that and displaying on the website?
I'm hoping Becca's going to pick that one up.
I believe, from my understanding, is that something that's still coming from the RCVS. That decision
Yeah,
tree, it's in what's the word, in consultation at the minute.
Oh,
But absolutely, it's something we can display. If you have a website from us, we can get it updated, and our websites will be compliant. It's going to be straight out to the box, so to speak, compliant. You don't have to think about those decisions, or how do I make it CMA compliant? If you have a website from us, we will make sure it's compliant for you. That is, if you have one with us currently, or you get one through us, there will be CMA compliance. We'll take that headache away from you. But absolutely, but it's something to be considered as well, and it is something to consider with people who don't have websites with us. Making sure it's CMA compliant is a little bit of extra work there, but we will make sure it's we are going across a standard and having a template, so to speak, so that all that information is in there for you up front. If you want to customize your website, great, but up front, we've got the important things you need to have to be CMA compliant. You do not need to worry about that.
definitely. Thank you for that, Rebecca. So now that we've kind of gone through what the website part would look like with Storia, this is something that Dr. Muse also spoke about as well. How would it look like from a booking journey perspective? So what the regulation is specifying is that you would have a non-removable confirmation footer, and there's a consultation fee in every email with the link to the full price list. So if you don't have that on your website, that's what you need to have, because that needs to be linked to the email. But if there is no pricing, you can't really move forward with the booking. So now what does this look like in practice? So what our team is working on right now is with Storia online booking for each of the appointment types. You can mention the minimum fee over here. So this gets picked up when you set up the confirmation email. So for each of the appointments, you can mention the minimum fee, and then there's a separate tab where you can just toggle on. That's all you've got to do. Just once the pricing is updated, all you have to do is just toggle it on to show, yep, I'm good to show the minimum fees in appointment confirmations, and then showing the price list in the appointment confirmations. And then once your website is updated with the price list, then you can add that link over here and save changes. And once you do that, this is what would look like when a pet parent, after booking an appointment, then when they get the confirmation email with that additional block which says, this is the appointment that you booked, here's the starting price, And if you want to see the rest of the pricing, you just got to click that link. So our team is working on updating this, and we're hoping to add more additions where how we can show that price transparency from the beginning of the booking journey. Those are some of the updates that the team is working on right now. So if if you're watching this right now, or if you're watching the recording later, thinking how it should look like in your booking journey, this is something the Vet Story team has already factored in. So that part of the pricing transparency when it comes to your booking journey is already covered as well. So I know we've been talking a lot about timelines. Dr. Muse, where are you on this journey? I feel like you're probably ahead because it looks like it's going to start rolling out in September. But for small providers, for example, all of these things like basic information, price list, all of those things will actually come into effect starting March. And the deadline is March. So how are you feeling about the timeline, looking at the full picture?
Yeah, I think we'll make it happen. Right, summertime is the worst possible time for me. Do you not find that the case? We're busiest in the summer, which I've never quite understood why small animal medicine is harder. But
Yeah,
yeah, there I think in some ways it's a terrifying thing simply because the documents are so extensive and
it is.
the language is difficult. So I'm going to be relying quite heavily on the VVA summary, let's be honest. And I do think it's worth those remembering that are listening with us that although there are fines, I'm fairly confident that the first step that any that would happen would be just a warning and a suggestion that you could do better and to improve things. So that a bit like with the practice standards schemes, you tick 500 boxes, but you've missed two, and they usually give you a couple of months to get those last two ones ticked, and then you've got 502, and yes, you get your accreditation. I imagine it'll be similar with this, but I think better to be organised, get cracking, and certainly I'll be getting my head down to this project soon.
Definitely. I agree. And I think I know when you see this, you're thinking, oh, okay, so it's not really September. I have some time. But I think the whole point we wanted to start this conversation is that because we don't want anyone to scramble, it is a regulation. It's not a suggestion, it's a requirement. Got to do it somehow. So, but I think it being paced this way helps to bring things one by one, which makes it manageable. So yeah, we're open to questions. If you have any, I know we kind of took some questions as we got in as well, but if anyone has like any questions about, what stories specifically can do, or if anyone is on their journey, we're happy to hear those as well. But all in all, what we want to do, especially with Rebecca's team, for example, what we want to help you or clinics achieve is make sure that we're not scrambling. As long as you bring all of that information in, like Rebecca said, about the pricing and the decision tree, as long as you bring all of that information together, when it comes to your website, Betstory can easily update that and make sure that the booking journey also shows in that as well. So couple of resources that I can also point if anyone would like to learn more about like what Story can do. If you want to scan this QR code, you can do that. There's also a couple of blog posts and checklists that the website has published also, which gives you an idea of what needs to be what needs to go up on your website. So those resources can help as well because that has brought in some of the elements of the report because like Dr. Muse said, it is a lengthy report to go through. But yeah, if you've got any questions, you can send it. Um, Let me see.
Oh, there's a question about a website I'm happy to take from
Yes.
Victoria. Can you update the whole of my website, including the CMA pages required? It's very outdated. Absolutely. love a website project. That's something we can do. So if someone is looking to get a new website, that is something we could do. You can host it with us. We can work with you to update your website pages, transform it, make sure you have not only CMA compliance, but again, good reach. A website's a great tool for advertising your practice. It should show you off what you can do and who you are as well. And as a pet owner, it's the first thing I would look at when I was looking for how to find a vet. Years ago, before I even joined the veterinary industry, I chose my old vet's website years ago because I liked their website. It was really nice and smart, and I thought, oh, that's nice. And then I went to the clinic, and they were brilliant. But it was the website that first drew me to them. It was really professional. It had loads of information on it. It wasn't overwhelming, but it wasn't just a we are ex website ex vets. We're great. It was informative, and it reassured me as a pet owner that that would translate into their care, which it did. They were wonderful. And the only reason I stopped using it was I moved away. Um, but no, that's something Vet Story can help us with websites. And again, we've talked about the CMA compliance. Absolutely, we can help with that. And if you're worried about being updated, we can reassure you that we are strong on our SEO, search engine optimization, making sure you're seen in Google, you're complying with website best practices. That's absolutely something we can do.
We have a very good question. I think, Dr. Muse, this might be an interesting one for you. It might be the experience of your team, or based on what you probably know. Will these new requirements increase the amount of time our team spends handling inquiries and explaining pricing?
Uh, um, I'm hopeful that for the reception team, it'll actually mildly improve things because we'll teach the receptionists that they're going to send a confirmation, and in that confirmation will be not only a minimum price for the expectation of what that's going to cost, but also a link to the online price list on our website.
Mm.
Perhaps for reception, it might be easier. But I do think it's going to make the vet's job harder. I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I'm actually gobsmacked that the CMA have had to write into their regulations that you have to give a written estimate for anything over 500 quid. I give written estimates for anything over, I mean, 60 quid. I speak about money during the consultation continuously. And it's not, I think on Monday, I sat down at the end of the day because I had 6 clients. I'd said, I'm going to send you an estimate, but I might not be able to do it straight away because I've got other appointments scheduled. And I literally sat down and wrote 6. And for some of those patients, I gave them 3 choices. You could choose to do nothing. You could have a fine needle aspirate and that will cost this much, or we could just go straight to surgery and take the lump off without an FNA and that will cost this much. And
Yeah.
laid it all out for them in writing after the consultation because there just isn't time in a 15-minute consultation for me to even make the calculations and then to send it out to them. So I did it after the end of the clinic. So I'm amazed that I just assume that all veterinary surgeons are doing that at the moment, and certainly itemized invoicing. The fact that it's there suggests to me that there are some clinics who don't yet have itemized invoicing. Now that feels a bit like
Mm.
you're still writing your result your clinical notes on an index card and putting it in a drawer. Like when I first joined the profession, that was how we did it, and then we just made up the fees and put them in writing on the line beside it. And um, I say make it up. We didn't really make it up. There was a price list. But
Um,
yeah, it was all a little bit old-fashioned. But yeah, the fact that it's in the regulations strongly suggests to me, and I do understand that in an emergency situation, if it was out of hours and it's an RTA and you've got a cat with a very serious set of injuries, what we would tend to do if we possibly can is we've got one team of people managing the cat and a certain separate person hopefully managing the owner and starting the process of now, are you registered? Let's get you registered. Let's get the phone number because we're going to need that later. And then moving that into a conversation about, look, it's likely your pet's going to need oxygen therapy and it's going to need intravenous fluid therapy. It's going to need serious pain relief. And then we're going to move on to some ultrasonography and then some x-rays. You need to be aware this is going to cost this much. So even I mean, we do emergencies in the daytime. We don't do our own out of hours, but we do manage emergencies in the daytime. And we still manage to give estimates. So yeah, I think it'll be very for those who are not already doing that, then that is going to be a huge increase in their time demand.
Thanks for that, Dr. Muse. I think we are pretty much on top of time, but We have one more question here. If I only have a basic website and a small team, what are the absolute minimum changes I need to make before September?
Shall I get that one?
Yeah,
None
sure.
at all. None at all. The September deadline is just for out of hours providers. If you're an independent like myself, just one practice, all the deadlines are. Is it possible to quickly flick up the deadline display you had a couple of slides ago? You'll see
Yeah,
that
let
as
me.
small providers, our deadlines. There we go. March 27. You've got 9 months to even, and only what's that? One third of the requirements need to be done by March, and then you've got another 6 months before September to do the bottom half. Okay, so I would suggest just take small bites, a little bit at a time, and don't panic. You'll be fine. It's I think it's a really positive thing for the profession. I think the profession needed this. That we will start hopefully to claw back some of the trust that has been lost as a result of the CMA's investigation and the reasons why there had to be a CMA investigation and the press coverage of the CMA investigation. And I think if we, as veterinary surgeons, all comply and are just very honest about it, we will claw back trust now.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining today. And I think just to kind of wrap up with what Dr. Muse just said, just don't have to, worry about it or like, be just you don't have to scramble or anything because one of the things is that, our team at Vetstoria, for example, is well equipped to kind of help with the booking and website side of things to make sure that we kind of walk through the timeline together. September is when things are supposed to start coming into effect, like Dr. Muse just said, and then there's it's categorically mentioned how you go each phase by phase. But feel free to book a demo with Vetstoria to see how we can help you. But also we have some resources on our website, vetstoria.com. But thank you so much, Rebecca and Dr. Muse, today for joining. This has been very interesting to understand through example, because that's something you've been doing also, and through what you've been hearing, Rebecca, because you're working with so many clinics. So it's good to get that perspective and see how we can kind of work together to make sure clinics can be compliant on time. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you both.